各位线上的投资朋友，大家好。今天呢，我们热门基金会客室非常高兴邀请到一位重量级的贵宾，他就是贝莱德世界科技基金的经理人 Tony Kim。Hi Tony, welcome.
Hello.
So first of all, could you please say hi to our audience?
Hi, it's great to be here in Taiwan.
Well, Tony, I know you've just arrived in Taiwan, and the purpose of this visit is to meet with Taiwan's tech companies and get to know Taiwan's tech sector. So we have taken this opportunity and prepared some questions for you so that we can have a better understanding of your fund and your investment process. But before we dive into those more serious questions, maybe we can start with something lighter. So my first question for you, as a tech fund manager, you are literally at the forefront of this AI revolution. So in your personal life, are you also using AI? Can you share with us some experience?
Yes. Besides using AI at work, at home, using some of the coding agents, build various applications. Also, I'm currently involved with our architectural project at my house, and using it for doing renders of architectural drawings of the house, of the backyard, and so use AI for that, and then AI to amplify research and have it run batch jobs to amass information so that help you learn about things. So yes, use it all the time, every day.
So it seems that you are also a heavy user of AI. But when it comes to work, has AI also changed your investment process or the way you make investment decisions?
What it's done is, in the last 3 years, I've embarked on a very large project internally called Project Asimov. And this is a way to reimagine research itself. So we've built it, and we have it now up and running. Is a way to enhance and really change the way we all do equity research at BlackRock. And so this is the first version of it, and now we're continuing adding more and more automation so that the AI can do more and more of the base tasks. And then that enables us to upskill, if you will, to take on more advanced reasoning and functions of research. I think research as we know it is going to change. And so we're bringing AI to bear to amplify the way we do research and really fundamentally change our day-to-day tasks. So yes, it's having a big impact on research. But at the end of the day, you know, that last judgment of portfolio, that investment, that's still, you know, with the human, but it is enhanced with what the AI is capable of.
I see. And one final and also a hypothetical question. If one day you were no longer a fund manager, what would you like to do the most?
Well, I would probably be a historian, teach history. I would also probably have a farm and, you know, do nature rewilding and teach history.
Well, that sounds quite interesting and fun. All right, now let's shift our focus back to the market and also the fund. So tech stocks have been on a very strong rally since 2023. And despite recent volatility and also the concerns about a potential AI bubble, what is your outlook for the tech sector over the next 3 to 5 years? Is tech still the best investment opportunity out there?
Well, you're talking to someone that's biased. I would say it is. It's not only the best, it is the singular investment opportunity. It's been 3 years, like you mentioned, since AI. Now we're in the 4th year. And it sounds like broken record. It'll be more of the same. This is the single biggest transformation that I've ever seen, maybe humanity has ever seen. And it's going to reshape the entire society and economy. And what AI is capable of, we're just scratching the surface. The first 3 years has all been about building the foundational compute infrastructure. The next 3 years, actually the next 3 to 5 years, will be more of that, continued more of that. There is one thing that everyone tells me is that we are still shorted of compute. There's an insatiable need, and there is still acute shortages. And so while that continues, then you are now seeing the capabilities of the AI start to really show up. And now we will be entering this next phase of what I see, just big transformation to every industry, to all of our jobs. And so those transformations, in addition with the growing investment in the infrastructure, is going to change things materially in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think nothing is going to stop that. And I think it therefore becomes the single biggest driver of investment, and it will ultimately drive the equity returns of this sector.
I see. So tech is still the biggest and the best investment opportunity out there. But the thing is that year to date, global markets have been quite volatile, just to say the least. And with escalating geopolitical tensions like the conflicts in the Middle East and also elevated equity valuations, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing the overall tech sector right now? And how should investors navigate through this volatile environment?
Investors should be patient. There are always wars. If you could just look back the last 5 years, we've had a lot of conflicts. We've had lots of interest rates. We've had currencies. We've had commodity scares. So I think that is common. And so we're just in another one of those. But my view here is the technology sector and navigating through this, ultimately, the returns will follow if where is the growth and where are the returns? Where's the value being accredited to? And as I see it, all of the investment that is going on in the world, the predominance is going to what AI is doing, because it's going to impact every industry, including this one that we're seeing right now in the Middle East. And the nature of warfare is fundamentally changing because of AI. Cheap drones are the queen of the battlefield right now, and then the AI countermeasures. And so I think this is all part of the same mosaic that what AI investment is driving, with or without these conflicts. We've seen, in just the last 3 years, many situations that have hit the market, but it just powers through. And I think that what's coming in the next 3 to 5 years will dwarf what we currently see as in these various conflicts that we're currently facing.
I see. So patience is key. And
patience.
Since we are talking about AI, over the past couple of years, those tech giants, they have been investing heavily in building out their AI infrastructure. However, right now, the market's focus is shifted from AI capex to monetizing AI capex. And not to mention that recently, NVIDIA's GTC conference showcased their AI robotics application in real life, and the hyperscalers are still spending money on their AI services. So my next question is that, in your opinion, what kind of AI applications are set to become the next growth engine?
Yeah, the market is always arbitrating the next topic of concern. As you mentioned, the last few years, all the questions I always got were, is it CapEx too much? Is it a bubble? Is it a bubble? Is it CapEx? It seems like those questions are not being asked as much because people have realized that the spending continues dramatically. And it's because of why are they spending the money? And it is because of what they deem to be, what is the prize? What is the prize that they're shooting for? And that is, I think, it's how it's going to change fundamentally every industry on earth, right? I've said this before many times. The global GDP is 110 trillion. 2/3 of all GDP is services and labor. Tech is actually a very small 10% of global GDP, but the other 90 is what is being potentially changed dramatically, and you're seeing now for the first time. The first 3 years was all about building the infrastructure, the capex, the computation, and now, but there's always there's a gap. There's a disconnect, if you will, between what the AI models at the state of the art, at the frontier of AI, are capable of. And their capabilities are well in advance of what currently is being adopted. And so we talk many times about agents, but this year, you're really seeing agents come alive. Especially here in Asia with OpenClaw and these agentic capabilities, because the capability of the model at the state of the art is well in advance of what is being implemented. And so we're finally seeing the beginning implementations. This is the real first use cases that's showcasing what it's capable of. I think the capabilities will continue to advance dramatic order of magnitude every year. And so you'll always have this lagging effect of capabilities versus what's implemented. And so, but the point is that these agents, the capabilities, they're targeted at this 2/3 of global GDP. And I would say every service, every job, how we currently are doing things could be transformed. And so I look back 5 years from now, how I'm doing my job, how you're doing your job, how other white collar people are doing their job will likely change dramatically. And then not only white collar labor, you mentioned robotics, which I just call physical AI systems. That is also being queued up, and that will also change the face of what the physical systems will also dramatically change. And so all of this is coming in the next 5 years, and we're at the very beginning of that. And so yes, and to your earlier question about the war, this is kind of why I say that we are still very, very early, and it's hard to imagine that we've spent so much money and we're still at this early stages. But what is coming is going to transform, I think society and the fundamental foundations of work itself.
And since you said that we're still at the very, very, very early stage of this AI adoption, and if we try to tie that back to the fund, the BlackRock World Technology Fund has consistently been a top performer in the market, and we have delivered very solid returns. So my question is that in such a fast changing landscape, how does your team or you construct the security selection strategy, and how do you generate alpha for our investors?
Well, it's always a difficult challenge, as you know. I think, we have a foundational perspective. How do we approach, technology? In many respects, there was technology industry before AI, and then the technology industry after AI. I've been doing this 27 years. The first 24 years was what I called a traditional perspective of AI before AI, but things have changed dramatically because the capabilities of these AIs forces you to rethink the base foundations of what you thought before are being challenged, and you're seeing that especially this year. January, February. You've all seen the SaaS apocalypse and these big rotations, And so within tech itself, there has been tremendous dispersion between winners and losers. And so into this, 3 years ago, I have a 3-layer framework. That base foundational layer is around the infrastructure and the compute. The middle layer is around the intelligence. And this top layer, which goes to that 2/3 of global GDP, has been around services and software. And you just seen the value has migrated toward the intelligence and the compute. And you saw that this year. The questions about CapEx and has shifted to, hold on a second, which business is at fundamental risk? And the market is starting to go through that assessment. But since we've had this framework, we're trying to migrate, we're trying to adapt. I think the point of this is, as investors, active investors, the most important thing right now in this world of AI is to have a sense of what framework you're investing towards, which we have, and then being adaptive. You must have dynamic adaptation, because I feel like every 3 months is the equivalent of 1 year in this new world. Things are changing so quickly, and the market is, and we're also evaluating who wins, who loses constantly, because these technologies are changing so quickly. What you thought was a safe business with a very safe business model is being questioned. So what we're trying to do every day with our best of our ability is to take in all of the information that we can, have this flexible, dynamic, adaptive approach to a stack, a philosophical view of where we think value is shifting in this stack, and then making those changes dynamically real time in the portfolio. And as a result, probably 80% of the portfolio is in the bottom 2 layers. We've made big decisions. Now that said, some of the biggest companies like Mag 7 have kind of gone sideways for the last year, and I think it's because of, for various reasons, but so we're trying to constantly adapt to this changing dynamic, especially after AI has really entered the conversation.
I see. And since you mentioned that we're going to see a huge and big dispersion between winners and losers within the tech sector. So if we can drill down a little bit deeper into the portfolio, and given the rapid rotation across the upstream, midstream, downstream of the whole AI value chain, what is your current focus in terms of portfolio positioning?
Okay.
And for instance, like Lumentum, like SK Hynix,
absolutely,
they have delivered strong performance recently. So how did these holdings contribute to the fund's overall returns?
Yeah, this is a great question. Let's go back to that 3-layer framework. This bottom layer, which is the power, the chips, the data centers, and then the middle layer are the models and the intelligence, and then the top layer is services and software and things. And as I mentioned, 80% or more of the portfolio is in these bottom 2 layers, either in the model through hyperscalers. And we have some small investments in some of the private model companies, but a lot of it is sitting in this bottom layer around the compute and the hardware and the infrastructure. And then in that layer, and you brought up Hynix and Lumentum, there is another sub-tiers of layers, right? There's, I was describing earlier this morning, there is the NVIDIA chip and the AMD chip, except the Broadcom chip, that's the accelerator. But then there is a whole stack. It's not just the chip, it's the HBM memory, which is Hynix and those kind of companies. There's the NAND flash, there is the networking switch, then there's the optical layer, which includes the laser, and that's Lumentum and Coherent in these companies. And then there's substrates, and then there's packaging, and then there's foundry. And so there's this cascade, if you will, a hierarchy that's because like no one layer of that supply chain can exist on its own. It's all supporting each other. And so, by the way, there are constraints. I always think tech is a world of constraints and a world of abundance. When things are abundant, prices go down and you have a glut. Well, right now, everything is in constraint. All of those things I mentioned are all in constraints. There's not enough lasers in the world to do the optics. So that's why it's driving Lumentum. There's not enough HBM memory in the world because all of these are serving these data center builds to build these models. And so what we do is we interrogate all of that chain, and then you say, where is the value going? Where does the value go, the profits? And do you have a business model that can help you capture that? And so a lot of this action is happening in that bottom layer, what you just described. The middle layer, there's a huge epic battle around the AI model themselves. It is Game of Thrones at the models layer. And unfortunately, at the top of the top layer, this is where a lot of the questions around, is your business model at risk? Are you losing value? All of those services and software, basically I view it as coming into the model itself. So the models, the AI, are grabbing the value from the top of the layer. And so we've shifted the portfolio over before AI to here to favor this layer. And we're just watching every layer of the stack and seeing which companies are winning and losing. And then that is being changed all the time. And so that's kind of how we're trying to adapt. That's why I call it dynamic adaptation.
I see. And the next question comes on behalf of our income-oriented investors, because we know the fund launched a total return stable distribution share class in 2023, which has been extremely popular among Taiwan investors. So my question is that, has the investment strategy or the investment process been adjusted in any way to accommodate this income distribution needs? And more importantly, how do you strike a balance between the growth potential of tech stocks and also cash flow generation?
Well, the simple answer is we just focus on the core portfolio, our thematic bets, our fundamental views on those companies. We have another team, and that's their expertise. Their expertise is based on this portfolio. How do we generate the core income need, the high dividend yield requirement? And so I let them do their job while we just focus on our job. And so we don't at all change our core approach, and they are the ones that can accommodate that.
I see. And my final question for you, in your opinion, what opportunities will this AI trend bring to Taiwan's tech sector? And what kind of role will Taiwan play in this broader AI landscape?
I think Taiwan is in an absolutely one of the best positions of all countries. And why do I say that? Going back to that 3-layer cake, Taiwan was never much about software and services. Right? I always say sovereign countries have fingerprints. We all have fingerprints. And when you look at the core capabilities of countries, Taiwan is amazing at semiconductors. Taiwan is amazing at supply chain and hardware. And Taiwan is great at engineering talent for those particular categories. It just so happens that Taiwan is effectively at the very base layer of that stack. Most of the economy, most of the companies, of all of those decades and decades of work, it has come to this. And AI is actually an absolute positive force for a country of Taiwan. there are very few countries in the world that are as well positioned to capitalize on AI as Taiwan. Korea and Japan are also well positioned, but AI is actually fantastic for Taiwan, and you have some of the best companies in the world that can capitalize on this trend.
Great. Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us today and share with us your firsthand insights and perspectives. Well, in addition to your company visits, we also hope that you get to enjoy some of those delicious cuisines and also beautiful scenery here in Taiwan. Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
最后，再次感谢各位线上朋友的收看。我们今天热门基金会客室就在这边告一个段落了。我们下次见，拜拜。
拜拜。
投资一定有风险，基金投资有赚有赔，申购前应详阅公开说明书。